Hello, it is a Tuesday, which means it's time for another in real life video. This week, I am freshly back from my little holiday, my little trip out of town. Hopefully, I'll be able to sort through pictures and get a few, I think a maximum of 20 is allowed, posted on Instagram before too long. I think last I checked, our total number taken, it was 400 or 500 pictures, so I got a few to go through, but nonetheless, we'll try and get, or I'll try and get, as if I have a team working on this, I'll try and get 20 of them on Instagram or whatever in some big fun post. But nonetheless, it was very good, except for the fact that on the way back, I got a bit of a cold. Thankfully, it's passing fairly quickly. Feel like I'm already on the upswing of it. But apologies in advance for any videos from the weekend and going forward that where I may have a bit of a cough or some sniffles or whatever, right? Such is the way of things, but thankfully it's not too bad whatsoever. And like I said, I think the worst of it was probably Monday or Sunday evening, right? So not too bad. Anyway, today I wanted to talk about my favorite DLC and expansions. I figured we would do a bit of a simpler one from myself, and one a bit relevant to current goings-on. Of course, Starfield just recently had the Shattered Space expansion DLC come out, its first one. It sounds like there's at least going to be two, if not more. We don't really know for certain, but there will almost certainly be at least two. But Shattered Space came out. They didn't send out early review copies, which, I don't know, is usually a bad sign, but when it comes to BGS, I don't think it's that bad of a sign because they've already had situations wherein they weren't always giving out early copies to every single publication, right? This may just be some sort of new rule they have going forward. I don't know. From the sounds of it, it sounds like it's a solid DLC and expansion. A lot of people who enjoy Starfield are enjoying it. People coming back to the game, enjoying it as well. So, of course, I haven't really had the chance to play it, and I won't for a few videos, I presume, in our Starfield playthrough. So, of course, that will be excluded from these talks, as will a number of other big expansions and DLC. I'm not usually the type of person to play and experience DLC or expansions to games, but it's something that I've certainly gotten more into the habit of doing, and something that I would like to continue doing, sort of as we continue with the channel, right? A big one that is on my to-do list is Cyberpunk's Phantom Liberty, right? Which everyone says is literally a game changer, that if you didn't really enjoy the core game of it, that Phantom Liberty and its accompanying update changed so much about the game and made it into a really fun and competent experience, right? It really sort of, I don't know, funneled what I thought was a lot of loose ideas. It kind of had a bit of an identity crisis when it came to what type of role-playing game it wanted to be. And it sounds like Phantom Liberty addresses that as well. There's lots of others I haven't played. I even made a little short list here, Red Dead Redemption 1, Undead Nightmare. I haven't played that. Let's see. Oh, I haven't played any of the Witcher 3 DLC, which I always hear great things about, speaking of CD Projekt Red. I haven't played the Mass Effect 3 Citadel little DLC bit, which similar to Phantom Liberty, I've heard addresses a lot of people's issues that they had with Mass Effect 3, particularly the sort of abrupt, or maybe not even abrupt, but too boiled down, too not in-depth enough, right? Sort of ending to that game, right? I've heard that Citadel really wraps it up, gives it a whole lot of necessary closure. That was just kind of absent originally. But I came with three that I really enjoyed, and one of which is actually a BioWare expansion, that being Dragon Age Origins. Its expansion, it had a decent amount of little DLC, but one big major official expansion, that being Dragon Age Origins Awakening. As if you couldn't get a they decide to throw on another little adjective onto the end of it, right? Origins Awakening. Double the origins, which, true enough, Awakening almost feels like a new game all to its own. If I remember correctly, when you navigate over to it in menus and stuff like that, you can very much play it like its own experience, right? You don't even need to have had a character that went through the core game, right? I think you can just roll a brand new character just for Awakening. Granted, you do miss out on some reactivity, because I think there's at least one companion that continues adventures with you. And I do believe that there is some degree of reactivity in Awakening. But yeah, either way, really thoroughly enjoyed Awakening. I thought it was so well paced and so much more focused relative to the core game, which I already really enjoyed the core game, but at some points it could kind of feel meandering, especially I remember going through like the dwarven areas in Dragon Age Origins. It felt a little bit meandering, particularly through the town, and then as you just start getting into like the big dungeon associated with the dwarven area, I forget the name of it, but that big, large area, it feels meandering at first, but it rapidly picks up steam. And like I said, Awakening very much addresses a lot of that. Also, as well, I almost put on this list one of the Pillars of Eternity Deadfire expansions, or even the first game, the White March Part 1 and 2, Pillars of Eternity 1 and 2. But I felt like that would maybe be better placed in my favorite sequels list, right? Just to sort of allude to another one that didn't make the list. I very much enjoyed Pillars of Eternity 1, the White March Part 1 and 2. It felt like like I said, a very similar situation from what went on with Awakening. Just a lot more concise, a lot better paced, sort of dials it back on a lot of the meandering stuff, not a massive lore dump, right? Just a lot more of a well-defined version of the core game, right? And just as well, Deadfire had some really, I mean, not all of them were super amazing, but I like I forgot what the name of it was, the one where you spend the majority of your time in an arena. That one was probably the weakest of them, but two of them at least were super duper rad. But like I said, maybe that fits better in a favorite sequels situation, where I feel as though, although the reception would tell you otherwise, I felt as if Deadfire was just a straight up across the board improvement and upgrade over Pillars of Eternity 1. Regardless, as neither here nor there. Different lists for a different video for a different time. But nonetheless, another one on my list would have to be one for a multiplayer game, an expansion for a multiplayer game, which I really very much enjoyed. That would be World of Warcraft, Wrath of the Lich King. If you've listened to or if you've watched or listened to a lot of my playthrough videos, you will know that I have an extensive background, having played a lot of World of Warcraft in my teens, and to a lesser extent my early 20s. But got a lot of World of Warcraft under the belt, and as is a sentiment remarked by many a player of that game, Wrath of the Lich King was just a major high point, right? The degree of excitement that everyone had for that expansion going in was through the roof, and somehow it felt like they delivered. It was sort of delivering on a lot of the promised plot points that were held in Warcraft 3 and Warcraft 3's expansion, The Frozen Throne, which by that point, even if you weren't like into the RTS back in the day, your interest in WoW would probably have spurred you forth to go back and play Warcraft 3, The Frozen Throne. And my gosh, it was amazing. And there were, at the time, there were books and stuff coming out, tie-in books to the stories of Arthas, who is probably still to this day one of the more compelling villains, or more, not even necessarily compelling, but just fun and pulpy, right? It's not like Arthas was doing anything particularly amazing. It was just a fun, pulpy little adventure, right? It's pretty much it's very close to the Darth Vader, Anakin Skywalker situation, right? Arthas Menethil's, I think, whole character arc. It's very, very similar. But nonetheless, like I said, it's very enjoyable in a fun, pulpy way, getting to explore it in a fantasy universe, particularly in Warcraft. It was just very fun. Like I said, the experience of going through that expansion was, I don't know, it was amazing. It included, at least from my time having played, Ulduar, which was probably my favorite raiding experience out of all of them. Very much enjoyed that. I thought that was super cool, and probably the raid that I put the most time into personally, right? I think that is the case. But yeah, it marks a high point, and I made friends playing that expansion and that game as a whole, but really got a lot of time in during Watlock, during Wrath of the Lich King. And they're friends I still have to this day, right? Met through the game, and we still keep up with each other. And finally, of my three that I decided to pick here, for my own sort of self-devised prompt even, would be, of course, if you have seen the Skyrim playthrough, the Dragonborn DLC. BGS, of course, pretty well known for putting out substantial expansions or DLC. A lot of them, if you had to make a top 3 or 5 or even 10 list, I'm sure one of their expansions or DLC would be on there, right? There's an immense measure of fanfare for all of them, even dating back to Morrowind, which was maybe some of the more rough, but still, I don't know, as a Morrowind player, they were still very memorable, the Morrowind expansions, right? But, there's no shortage of people clamoring over the Shivering Isles, even though I don't think the Shivering Isles is all that it was cracked up to be, but loads of people love it. There's no denying that. Loads of people love Point Lookout, Mothership Zeta, Far Harbor in Fallout 4, and of course, Skyrim's Dragonborn DLC. The Dawnguard DLC as well, some folks like that, but man, as a person whose first BGS game was Morrowind, and I still play Morrowind about an hour every week to this day, the Dragonborn DLC is just such a major love letter to people who enjoyed Morrowind, I feel. They did it in such an incredible way. Like I said, there was so much, there was both fan service and a cool way in which they could sort of involve the current goings on, right? And sort of not necessarily advance the plot of Morrowind, but advance what was going on in that region, right? By virtue of destroying the hell out of it, which frankly I respected a lot. I enjoy a lot and respect a lot their gumption to just obliterate Vardenfell, to just absolutely obliterate it with the Red Years, sort of showing off the devastation from afar. Man, I loved it. What's more Morrowind than that, than loving the destruction of something that you hold dear, right? What's more Dunmerry than that? Absolutely incredible. Like I said, the vibes of it are so different from the core game, from even the Dawnguard expansion, right? A lot of it is so otherworldly in that very particular Morrowindy way, wherein not only do you have the interesting culture and stuff, but you get to see all the different sorts of creatures and stuff, stuff that I hope makes it into the next Elder Scrolls, right? A lot of the more higher fantasy, I guess would be the term. A lot of the higher fantasy stuff, rather than your sort of like bog standard, fantasy that we saw in Oblivion, where, goblins and minotaurs and ogres, right? Sure, have some of that in there too, but get some of the otherworldly vibes as well. Or at the very least, have it show up in an expansion or DLC, right? But, as I said, bit of a shorter one. Not really anybody who asked for this one, but just a fun little, I don't know, foray into talking about my favorite expansion / DLC. And as I said, there's a ton that I haven't played, right? A ton that I've heard amazing things about. That said, I don't know if there's anything that could really dethrone my love of the Dragonborn DLC, right? Because it just really hits for someone who thoroughly enjoyed both Skyrim and Morrowind. It was just hitting on everything, on every side. It was just incredible. I don't know if there'll be anything else quite like that ever again. I would be curious if they'll do something for Skyrim with Elder Scrolls 6, right? Granted, there is no interstitial Elder Scrolls game like mainline Elder Scrolls game, but time has permitted, I think, that they could do something like that, right? Enough real life time has passed where I think it could be warranted, Anyway, that ought to do it for this week. As always, if you have a question, feel free to submit. It helps if you include a question mark. That ought to do it, man. I'm doing pretty good with the cold situation. I feel I haven't really had an urge to cough yet, man. All right, maybe gonna get down to recording some stuff. Like I said, Shattered Space came out. I've kind of been putting it off because I don't want to try and record a whole bunch and then be hacking up a lung the whole way through. Same goes with Baldur's Gate 3, which I've definitely on my trip suffered some Baldur's Gate 3 withdrawals. Nonetheless, thanks for watching, I guess. Until next time, please take care of each other.